Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
37th episode, and unfortunately Mike's not here this week. He's still crying about Anthony Joshua. Oh, actually no, he's right there. How's it going, Mike?
Here I am.
He was gone for a little bit, and I didn't think he was going to show up to the studio today, and I just assumed that he was still depressed and encountering some sadness because of his countryman Anthony Joshua. Are you over it now?
I'm American now.
You're American now? You're American? You've been American for how many years now over here?
I've been over here, 5 years now? So, yeah.
5-ish years?
Just like one of those soccer fans that just changes shirts, you know, when the team loses, I'm just going to put another one on.
But after the Joshua loss, you're American now?
Mexican-American, to be precise.
Mexican-American, to be precise. So, I hope you get a Snickers deal, just like Andy Ruiz is probably going to do.
I should do with this belly.
But episode 37 of the Last Round Podcast. Once again, and before we continue on the rest of the show, we were supposed to have Ronald Winky Wright on this episode. It feels like some scheduling issues got in the way. So we're hoping that as we're recording this, that he gets back to us. We had confirmed with him, but we don't know. We think there's some scheduling issues, logistics going on. So we're hoping, crossing our fingers, that as we record this, he reaches out and we can get him on the line. But as of right now, we'll just continue on with the show and review this past week's fights, Saturdays at, Madison Square Garden? 3 weeks in a row? 2 weeks in a row of boxing, right?
Yeah, it's been busy for the East Coast.
Busy for the East Coast. How come they're taking away all of our fights over here in L.A.?
Busy for DAZN.
Busy for DAZN. But this, I don't know, man. I like MSG, but they're taking away our LA fights.
The Mecca of boxing.
Is the Mecca? Okay, let me ask you this before we continue. Is the Mecca of boxing Madison Square Garden, or is it the StubHub out here in LA? Oh, I gotcha there. Everybody on social media, you guys got to debate that.
I know. Everyone in the West Coast seems to love the StubHub because there always seems to be, every time there's a fight there, it's always a war.
Hell yeah.
Matisse, Oscar Valdez.
Yeah. But I don't know. That's going to be a debate for a long time. But I think because MSG has the tradition and the history behind it, it's probably going to tip the scales a little bit more. But let's just jump into it. DAZN, this past June 8th, past Saturday night, Gennady Golovkin makes his debut on DAZN as he KOs Steve Rolls in the 4th round and gets his 39th victory. Gennady Golovkin hasn't been in the ring since his loss to Canelo. What was that? 9 months ago? Just about?
Yeah, it must be about 9 months ago now.
So the first few rounds of this fight, Rolls actually got some shots in. But people got to remember that Gennady usually lets you hit him. Do you agree that did Rolls catch him, or did Triple G let him get comfortable and then chase him down?
No, I totally agree. I was going to touch on. I think Golovkin actually kind of touched on that in one of the interviews I saw, where he kind of said that, I think he wants fighters to believe they can touch him, so they open up, which
he gives them confidence, yeah.
Yeah, which creates openings for him, to come through, to get forward and, land those big shots.
Well, because that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, I thought he looked good. I thought some of the things you could see with the, obviously this is his first fight under Jonathan Banks. I thought he looked a little bit leaner. I thought he threw more combinations.
He did look leaner. I noticed that too.
He wasn't always just looking for that one big shot. So I thought, for his first fight underneath Jonathan Banks, obviously he was fighting, a lesser known name as well. But I thought he looked good. I thought for someone of his age, I thought you could see little, there weren't huge changes. I thought mostly it was just he was throwing multiple punches, more combinations, instead of just doing the one plodding shot the whole time, which should make it good, hopefully, for the Canelo fight, if it's going to be Canelo 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what he's looking for, as he called him out. He's been saying it in interviews, but I think he did obviously what he needed to do to Steve Rolls, stopped him. And Rolls actually got some shots. There was one straight left. It was kind of like a hard jab that snapped Gennady's head back. I think he was going back with the punch, but he got caught just enough where it snapped his head back. And I was like, oh, that was probably Rolls' best punch of the fight. But I think, do you think Rolls had the confidence coming in, especially after watching Andy Ruiz get the win? Because people were asking him about him. Obviously, as in terms of the betting odds, like Golovkin was the favorite, just like Joshua was, but Ruiz comes in and dethrones Joshua. So I'm sure there was more people who actually watched this fight between Rolls and Golovkin because they saw Ruiz beat Joshua the week before, and they're like, oh, what if it happens again? What if this guy beats Golovkin?
Yeah, I'm sure that probably helped a little bit, and you could tell by his style that he kind of came in and tried to actually take the fight to Golovkin. I don't know whether Golovkin obviously just kind of like you touched on to begin with, just let him build in confidence, to create those openings, which worked in Golovkin's favor. I think you could see quite early on that Golovkin was going to take, was just kind of measuring him and then backed him up onto the ropes like he always did, and then hit him with that kind of, I think it's a Golovkin style punch, really, that kind of corkscrew right hand that he throws.
Oh yeah, that one that came from it was like a 10 o'clock.
Yeah, it's a very unorthodox kind of.
That was I don't think I've ever seen him do that. On the broadcast, they said that he did it to Antonio DeMarco.
Yeah, it was a while since he'd been used.
That was at the StubHub too, Mecca of boxing. We're biased though. We live in California. But yeah, that punch when I was watching it live, I saw him come from if I remember correctly, it looked like he fainted, like it was going to be a straight jab. But at the last second, he goes up and he does like a corkscrew. So he goes like this and then bam, just gets him on the forehead. And I was like, what the hell? And I think that was a shot. Actually, I'm pretty sure that was a shot that kind of, disrupted Rolls' rhythm. Because shortly after that is when he knocked him out, right?
Yeah, because did you see he switched to southpaw?
Yeah, I saw
after
that.
He connected, switched to southpaw, then kind of hit him with a hook.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit different to his usual stance under Abel Sanchez. I think those little things, bringing back some of the punches he used to do. I think Jonathan Banks kind of just I
think he just refined a lot of things.
Yeah, he just took him back a few years.
Yeah.
Where he'd gone stale, he just brought him back to kind of like what Buddy McGirt's been said about Kovalev.
Yeah.
Instead of changing him, they've become so reliant on just being a knockout puncher and having that reputation that's all they look for. So, they're just loading up big shots, single shots.
Yeah.
Where you just need to go back to more of an amateur style, more of a boxer style.
Right.
So, just kind of be clever, to get that, to be able to get to so many fights, 37, 38, 39 years old. You just need to be, more clever in what you do instead of just loading up, wasting a lot of energy just on those big shots.
No, you're right. I think it was more like if people were going to watch this in terms to see how he looked under Jonathan Banks, okay, is he going to look that much different now that he's left the trainer that he was with since he came to the States in 2011, something like that. If you were watching this fight to look for drastic changes in his fight game, that was the wrong mindset, because he's already essentially a veteran in the sport. He's not the type of fighter at this point in his career where you're going to change his style. So there wasn't anything if you're not really a boxing fan, then you're more of a casual fan and you watch this fight okay, he nothing different. But if you're a boxing fan and hardcore fan, essentially, you can kind of see, like you just mentioned, the minor details that he kind of worked on, and that corkscrew punch. I mean, he hasn't done that in years. Mm-hmm. So I think Jonathan Banks knows that, regardless in terms of he came into this camp replacing Abel Sanchez. And I think he already had the mindset, look, I'm not going to change this guy's game totally. He already the style he has already been effective. It's been working, regardless if he's had some controversial decisions the last couple fights. So I think he just refined him. And I think one big thing too that he did for him, because he, like we mentioned it a couple minutes ago, that he did look leaner. Because I noticed that. I noticed that, especially at the weigh-in. Jonathan Banks gave him, I think, a nutritionist this time. And for the past several years, he's never really had. Abel Sanchez has always handled like the strength and conditioning, the food, and all that stuff. And he's with Jonathan Banks, I think he added all those different pieces to that puzzle. Because if you remember in past interviews, Triple G and Abel Sanchez would even say, yeah, he can eat whatever he wants. You know, he can eat whatever he wants, and we like the hard work is done in the gym. I mean, I get it, but it worked for him. You know, it worked for him. But this camp, at least if I'm remembering correctly, he had a nutritionist, so they made him all these like specific type of meals to cut weight. You know, these healthy meals and stuff like that at certain parts of the day. And I mean, I would think that makes a big difference, right? Because I mean, like when you're trying to like get lean or lose weight, working out isn't just like, you know, the main thing you're going to focus on, even though it's a big part. Dieting and all that stuff is a huge part, probably even more than working out. What do they say? Like 80% diet, 20% working out.
Yeah, always say that. Then you know what, you can't outwork a bad diet. Yeah. So, you know, and instead of, you know, if you've got a good diet like he obviously did for this camp, you don't get to those last final days where you're trying to cut 7-8 pounds of water weight from your body, and then you're going into the fight, you know, dehydrated, lightheaded, you know, you're not 100%. So I think it was a good idea to do that. Obviously, you know, he's getting on there in his career. So I think the change of camp so far, you know, just after just that one fight and just, you know, looking at him aesthetically, I think he looks very good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he looked fine. You know, there wasn't anything drastic that was changed. That punch that knocked out Rolls, that it was like that straight left. It was kind of like Rolls was already kind of tipping to his right, and then Triple G kind of catches him with that left and kind of just sends him even more and falls him to. And he face planted. I was like, oh man, he's done. He literally face planted, and then he kind of like wakes up 3-4 seconds later. He's like, oh crap, where am I? I mean, that was a hard shot, but I mean, like, it wasn't, at least from the angles that we had, it didn't seem like it was that crazy of a shot. Like, it wasn't like Gennady had all his force behind it. You know, he kind of had to lunge forward and tap him.
Yeah, he didn't like load up on it, but
it was just enough. Like,
just a heavy-handed fighter, isn't he?
No, yeah, he's just a heavy-handed fighter, and you got to think about it in terms of Rolls hasn't fought the elite fighters that Gennady's fought over the years. Of course, you know, the resumes are drastically different. So, you know, a guy like Canelo or something like that, or Jacobs could take a punch like that. But, you know, there's levels to this, like we've said.
I have a useless stat for you. That was Triple G's first non-title fight since 2010.
That's a lie, and you know it. I don't believe it. Actually, no, I believe
9 years.
He's the long. Yeah, what did they say? He's the longest unified champion in history. I didn't know that. They kept saying that on the DAZN broadcast, and I was like, I gotta fact check that. But I'm going off of their commentary. That he's the. I think I'm remembering that correctly. The longest unified champion in history, I believe. If I'm wrong, please don't hate me. But I think that's what they were saying. That's actually a pretty big accomplishment.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
But, you know, of course he calls out Canelo for the third fight, which I think will happen.
Yeah, did you see Oscar De La Hoya's tweet that he put afterwards?
Yeah. You know, he tweets,
like, get a belt and come back to us.
Yeah,
Canelo's your daddy or something like that.
You know what, though? The thing that was funny. I mean, I get it. It's promoting the fight, publicity. They're just adding spice, adding fuel to the fire, in a sense. But I just thought it was kind of funny that Oscar De La Hoya tweeted that. He said, "Oh, fight somebody better, win a belt, and then maybe." And then this is the key word I focus on. And maybe I'll consider giving you the third fight or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. I don't know if that's the exact tweet, but it was around that. And then the hashtag he put, Canelo is your boss. But he says, and maybe I'll consider giving you the third fight. And then he puts, Canelo is your boss. And it's like, wait a minute. You just said, I'll consider giving you this third fight. But then you said, Canelo is your boss. So is Canelo going to give the okay? And then you're going to get the fight? I just thought it was kind of funny. It was kind of like, what if you just put we instead of I, you know?
I think it's going to be all down to John Skipper, personally.
Oh, yeah. He's
signing those checks. So.
Yeah, I mean, you don't think that Skipper John Skipper, he's for people who don't know, John Skipper is the head of DAZN. He's like the president or CEO or something like that. And he was formerly at ESPN. He was, so he knows his stuff. But yeah, I mean, you don't think they sign guys like Canelo and Triple G, of course, like saying like, look, we're paying you all this money, all the money they're paying Canelo, and saying we have to get the biggest fights. They're a new platform. They need the views. Their biggest publicity was 2 weeks ago or last week, the Joshua Ruiz fight. I mean, I'd like to see how many followers they got across social media, how many subscriptions they got on YouTube because of that, because that got picked up everywhere, and it helped because it was a heavyweight title fight. Because, I mean, we all know in the sport, heavyweight boxing is just different from the rest of the weight classes.
It probably got more views than it would have done if Joshua had won.
Oh yeah,
because it was such a big surprise.
Yeah. I firmly believe that. Firmly believe that if Joshua would have won, it wouldn't have got near as publicity.
And they'll want the Canelo and Triple G 3 fight, because I'm sure that, if they do that, they're going to say, where else can you get Canelo, Joshua, Triple G, Canelo v Triple G in the space of May to September? So in 5 months, this is what you've had, all for $10 a month, $20 a month if you do month to month,
or like $100 for the whole year or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what they want to do. Since they've been opening around a year, they need those big fights. The only reason they got Canelo and Triple G was to create that third fight.
Right.
So they don't want anything getting in the way. Look what happened to Joshua. They didn't expect him to lose to Ruiz.
No, right.
So they don't want to wheel Canelo out against Callum Smith, say, and then, he gets caught, loses, or
I would love to be a fly on the wall like that Monday after Ruiz beat Joshua, or at least that week after Ruiz beat Joshua with this last week and a half or whatever. Because like I mentioned, of course DAZN would want Joshua to win because he fights on their platform. But like you said, Joshua winning wouldn't have gotten the same publicity with Ruiz winning. Like nothing near that. And I would love to be a fly on the wall like on that, if they had like a meeting in the aftermath in terms of, okay, like, Joshua's gonna get the rematch, so hopefully like he gets the belt back or the belt's back. But we got a ton of press and a ton of publicity. Our stuff was all over the place, all across the world because of this, So it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of an analogy to say it, but in terms of that, I'm trying to say like they kind of benefited in a sense from both sides. Like, well, yeah, their guy didn't win, but they got a ton of press. And if they were already like solidified, like, in the sport, like Fox, Showtime, and stuff like that, they've already been in the sport of boxing for years. Yeah, it would still help, but like they'd be like, oh well, it doesn't matter. We already have our fan base and stuff like that. But they're a brand new service. They're a brand new sporting streaming service, and they got
just to the US though.
Right. No, right.
They've been in like Italy and Asia.
No, yeah, but like everybody comes to the US for money. That's why. That's what people have asked us, people have asked me before, but I'm pretty sure you've gotten this question, is that, how come all the big fights happen like in Vegas and stuff like that, like in front of like 20,000 people at T-Mobile Arena, when you could come to like Wembley Stadium and sell out 80 to 100,000 people? How are you not going to make more money over there? You make more money over here. It's fighting in front of 20,000 people, 20,000 people, than fighting over there in front of 80 to 100,000 people.
Well, the casinos bankroll it, don't they?
Yeah. And I mean,
because they know that, was it, for example, when Mayweather didn't go to jail and they let him, stay out for those 60 extra days for the Pacquiao fight?
Yeah.
They said that it brought, $1 billion in revenue to the strip. So the MGM, paying an extra 20, 30, 40 million into the pockets, it's win-win.
Yeah.
Because the casinos know that, they're going to have to pay for rooms, they're going to drink, they're going to gamble, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. So that's why, and the taxes are also less in Vegas.
Yeah,
that's why
there's no state tax. So
that's why a lot of the fights go there.
Yeah. So if you don't live in the United States, we have our federal government and we have our state governments, local governments, stuff like that. The federal governments have tax everything, but there's some states like Nevada, Las Vegas, Nevada, that don't have state tax. So that's why a lot of fights happen in Vegas. One, because there's a ton of casinos. It's entertainment. There's a ton of money that flows through that area. And two, because there's no state tax. So the money you make over there from your purses, the fighters' purses, the promoters and stuff, you get to keep more of it.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, if you fight in California, if you fight in LA, there's a lot of buzz out here, there's a lot of publicity, Hollywood and stuff like that. So, there's pros and cons to it, but there's federal tax and state tax in California. So you're going to get less money in that check.
It's like 30%, isn't it, I think?
I don't even know.
It's high. When you add them up, it's like 28 to 30% you lose.
It's high. So, that's why that's why fights happen like in Texas, because Texas is the same thing as Nevada, Las Vegas and stuff like that. So, he calls out Canelo, and then, honestly, like, if I was Triple G, I wouldn't even have called out Canelo. Like, I know he's getting all these questions, but I would just kind of leave it. Be like, because, Canelo's never really been, like, it just makes Canelo, like, be even more solidified as the bigger star. Because, like, you're calling him out. Like, and I get it. There's always that one marquee fighter that doesn't do the call-outs. Like, everybody calls him out because he's a moneymaker and he's a talent. It was Mayweather for the longest time. And now it's been Canelo. And I think, honestly, like, if I was Triple G in his camp, like, I wouldn't even mention him. Be like, oh, yeah, if I get the fight, I get the fight. I'd like to avenge it, but, it is what it is. Throw out, I think Triple G's at that, he's been at that echelon where he doesn't have to call anybody out. Like, I get it. He makes the most money with Canelo, but it's like, but maybe DAZN was pushing the narrative.
It's funny that Canelo, if you think about it, is such a big marquee name. He doesn't have that persona, where Mayweather had that persona, McGregor has a persona. Canelo doesn't really call anybody out. He's quite quiet, to be honest with you. He doesn't really speak does he do any interviews in English? Very rare.
No, very rare. Yeah.
And he's still,
but he understands English.
He's still probably top of the game.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, people calling him out just solidify him as the biggest star, and which is, he's earned it. He's fought Triple G the last 2 times that he fought Jacobs. Like, he's been in some tough fights, honestly. Like, I people talk about pound for pound and stuff like that. Like, people are like, oh, Canelo shouldn't be there, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, he should be. Like, he has a strong argument to be number one. And I get it. And
his last 5 fights, he'll be, Triple G 3 times?
Yeah.
Daniel Jacobs, and then the Beast, Rocky Fielding.
Rocky Fielding, man, that solidified him as number one.
Yeah.
I saw a tweet today, and if the person who tweeted this, I forgot who you are, I forgot what your handle is, but I glanced at it. It said, and I think I texted you about it, where they said, I was scrolling through Twitter earlier today, and it said, okay, now that Canelo and Triple G have gotten through their respective opponents the last year or so, or the last 9-10 months. Now it's time to give the fight fans the fight that they really want, and that's Rocky Fielding versus Steve Rolls. I was dying, man. I was dying when I heard that, but that was my laugh of the day right there. That was my laugh of the day, because honestly, like, I think that would get some viewers, just because, like.
Yes,
it's intriguing.
Like a handful.
Yeah, you never know. You never know, man. You never know. But yeah, Canelo, Triple G 3, September. What do you think?
I think it'll go ahead. I think, like we touched on, I think DAZN, Oscar can say what he wants. He signed the contract. Triple G signed the contract, and I think now that DAZN, John Skipper, are just going to tell him, like, hey guys, we want it now. We need to get those. We're paying you top dollar. We need to get those subscriptions up.
No, you're right. You're right. And if you think about it, I think it's going to be announced in the next probably 3 weeks.
September 14th, it should be.
Because usually they announce it like about 2.5-3 months out, like a prominent fight.
Yeah, because they're obviously going to do the press tour.
Yeah, they're going to do a press tour and stuff like that, or at least a minor press tour. I don't think they're going to do a big one again. They'll probably just do it in one city. But I think we're going to hear something in the next 3 weeks, probably. Maybe 3-4 weeks. 3 weeks, I say. Within that window, you're going to hear who Canelo fights next for sure.
Yeah, because
sure.
You're going to obviously do the press. They want the hype.
Yeah. Yeah. So is it going to be Canelo Triple G 3? It's likely.
I would be surprised if it wasn't.
Yeah, it's likely. But
I think all the usual obstacles that are going to be in the way, I think they're both sent to DAZN.
oh yeah,
John Skipper's going to demand it. I think there's going to be it's going to be huge if Oscar tries to dig his heels in and say, no, what's Triple G bringing to the table? I'm wondering, whether Oscar's saying that and saying he has no titles because he wants Canelo to be the A side. He's going to be difficult and say, he's walking out second. He wants our music. We want to be on this side of the poster. All the usual stuff that they try to do to, make him the A side and him the B side.
right. No, yeah. I mean, but it happens every time somebody brings up that conversation that, like, oh yeah, the A side, B side, blah, 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 I always think back to the HBO boxing face-off between Sergio Martinez and Miguel Cotto. I don't know if you remember it, but Max Kellerman was like in the middle doing this thing. And then Sergio Martinez was the middleweight champion in that fight. But Cotto was the A side. So Cotto's name was like first. He was introduced second. Now, Cotto was the moneymaker. And during that face-off, they kept saying, like, Cotto kept saying, side A and side B, I'm side A, I bring in the tickets, and they kind of go back and forth. He's like, I fill the stadium, I put the butts in seat. He's like, I think he tells Martinez, how many times have you fought at Madison Square Garden? And then Martinez is just like, oh, none. He's like, I fought there like 9 times or something like that. He's like that, and he's pretty much telling him that's how the business works. Like pretty much saying, it doesn't matter about the belts. He's like, I bring the money. And then Martinez took it kind of as an insult, where he's just like, oh, he's calling me a Class B fighter. And then Cotto jumps in. He's like, no, that's not what I said. And then he tells Max Kellerman, he was like, do you get what I'm saying? I'm not calling him a Class B fighter. He's like, I didn't say that. He's like, I just said he's the side B from like a money standpoint. He's like, I didn't say he was Class B. And then Max Kellerman kind of differentiates that to Martinez, saying, do you understand what he's saying? He's not calling you Class B. He's just saying you're side B in terms of money. And then Martinez kind of ignores it and goes on to the next topic. But that's how I always look at it, because I've heard people have like, oh, Class B and stuff like that. It's the moneymaker, whoever the moneymaker is.
Well, Cotto lived by that rule, didn't he, really? The belts don't matter because he dropped, was it the WBC? Because he didn't want to pay the sanctioning fees?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. What was the number they were throwing around at that time?
I think it was like 400,000 of his purse.
Yeah. It was.
It's like 9%, 10% or whatever. And he was like, hell no, and just dropped it.
I don't know, man. I just think it's funny that, like, I think the IBO recently, they were trying to sanction a fight for their belt or something like that, or one of their champions was gonna defend it or something. I forgot what it was, but it was a couple months ago. And that whatever that fight was, I think it was supposed to be in the UK or something. At first they announced it was going to be for the IBO, and then they, sometime later they said that it wasn't. Somebody tweeted at who's the president of the IBO? Levine, yeah. Right? Ed Levine?
Yeah, I believe so.
And they tweeted at him like, hey, I thought this fight was for the IBO, and I forgot what fight it was. They're like, what happened? They're not advertising anymore or anything. And then he responded and said, oh, we couldn't come to an agreement on the fees. And I was like, dang, really? Like, pretty much just throwing it out there like, oh, we couldn't come to an agreement on money. Like, what? Like, I get it. Like, they're their own separate entities, and you have to pay for the fight for their belts, because this isn't like the UFC where it's all one big conglomerate. There's pros and cons to both sides of that argument. But I just thought it was funny. I was like, dang, really? It just said, oh yeah, we couldn't come to an agreement.
If you go on a lot of the websites, you can actually see how much the sanctioning fees are. They don't hide it. I think the WBC, you can't find it, but I think IBF, IBO, if you go onto the websites, you can actually see it, and it's like a certain percentage of the purse.
See, but like, regardless if people agree with that or not, if they're transparent on that and they put it like on the site, like saying, look, regardless of what it is, we do 2%, 2.5% or whatever. It doesn't matter if you're $100, $100 million, like 2.5%. But if you're not posting it or you have no uniform rules, like you literally go into it like as a business, it's like, man, that's kind of sketchy, man.
At the WBA.
I mean, yeah, I don't know, man. It is what it is. It is what it is. If you want to be in the game, that's what you're going to have to just adapt to.
It's cloak and dagger, isn't it?
It is. It's cloak and dagger. Absolutely. Or like before the first Canelo Triple G fight was made, I think after he fought after he beat Chavez or something. I remember Canelo said in a post-fight interview, he was like, forget the belts for this fight. He was like, we're putting those to the side. We don't care about the belts. We're going to fight for honor and glory. Like, and I remember he said in subsequent interviews after that, he's like, yeah, I don't care about the belts. Because it's true in this sport, and even in UFC and any combat sports, especially, when you become such a superstar and you bring in the money, that supersedes any belt that you have. It really does. I mean, having the belts is just going to make you more legitimate and stuff, and be announced as the current middleweight world champion. But when you're the moneymaker, I'm sure I think Mayweather's even said that in interviews where he's just like, yeah, like, that's the world championship that everybody wants to have. That's that title. I'm sure if you ask every fighter, hey, would you rather be, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. We might get hate for this, but I mean, like, what do you think if you asked, 20 fighters from amateur to pro, veterans or whatever, all in between. If you ask them, would you rather win world titles your whole life and, make a decent living and stuff like that, or win, maybe one world title, but you become such a superstar that you make a ton of money over your career, but you never fight for a belt? You're always going to fight for some title. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Yeah,
I know what you're trying to say. I think it's hard because I think, once you get to that Mayweather status and you've already won the titles and you've held so many of them, then you can just go on and fight for glory and stuff like that. But when you're coming up and you've never held that, the green and gold, the WBC title that everyone, I imagine, you picture Muhammad Ali and all those guys back in the day, that's they're probably the most prominent, the number one that everyone wants to hold. So I think I'd like to think that people come up and they want to fight for glory and stuff like that. Obviously there's always a motive for money.
Right.
But
I mean,
it's hard to say. I'm sure it's a mixture depending on who you speak to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody obviously wants to make a living, but I'm sure, there's people like, no, I want to win world titles. Because I mean, like, you still want to be able to solidify your legacy. So, but it is what it is. But moving on that card, damn, we talked about that fight for a while. I mean, it was the main event. It was Triple G. He's a prominent.
Biggest fight of the weekend.
Yeah, biggest fight of the weekend. 6-round TKO. Israil? Is it Israil?
Israil Madrimov, I believe.
Madrimov gets the TKO in the 6th round and improves to 3-0 over Norberto Gonzalez.
Pretty dominant performance by him. And Steve spent the week at Joel Diaz's gym before the fight. And he's put a tweet out saying that Joel Diaz had said that Israil was the biggest talent he's had come through the gym.
No way. Really? That's a pretty big statement.
That's a pretty big statement from someone like Joel Diaz.
That's a pretty big statement. Because he's had guys like Desert Storm, Timothy Bradley.
Virgil Ortiz.
Well, Virgil Ortiz is he still with Joel Diaz?
No,
he's
with Robert Garcia.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I didn't expect that.
Big praise.
That's big praise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we'll see. Still very early in his career. I'm sure we're not going to be able to see him, in prominent fighters for at least maybe 10 more fights. So he's only 3-0. But let's see. Let's see how it lasts. I'm going to have to keep an eye on him. And then also on that card, Nikita, what is it? Ababiy? How do you say that? How do you say that, Mike?
I would say it the same.
Oh, forget it. I'm not going to say these Russian names anymore. I feel like I insult our Russian fans, our Ukrainian fans. Improves to 5-0. First round KO over Juan Francisco Lopez Barajas.
It was a good fight whilst it lasted. Just came in, big body shot.
They were both undefeated too.
Yeah. Just measured him. You could see he was watching him, waited till he committed, big body shot, and actually dropped him twice with the same shot. Dropped him, he got up at I think around 8 and then went down again. It's had a few first round knockouts so far. So, they don't get paid for overtime as they say, so get them out as quick as you can.
Get them out as quick as you can. And then there was also one more on that card that I wanted to touch on. It was one of Triple G's fighters. Ukrainian kid.
The one begin with M. Madrimov.
No, I don't think, no, it wasn't him. It was it was a Ukrainian kid, like Ali something. Is it Ali? You know what I'm talking about? Ali's. He's one of Triple G's fighters. Because I remember Tom Loeffler. I wouldn't even call him Triple G's promoter anymore. Is he still a promoter? Is he on the team? I don't know. Tom Loeffler was talking about him a lot and saying that, you know, this is the next guy to be a superstar and get some fights in and stuff like that.
Ali Akhmedov.
That's what it is. Yeah, I knew it was Ali something.
14-0 TKO round 3.
Yeah,
against Marcus McDaniel, who was 15-0 undefeated.
Yeah, I thought that was a good performance by him, because like I made sure to watch that because, you know, Loeffler and some other people were mentioning him, like, oh yeah, keep an eye on this guy. He's one of Triple G's fighters and stuff like that. I was like, okay, you know, it worked out. So, you know, we'll see how he goes. But 14-0, he's already kind of high up there in terms of wins, where he can probably get a semi-decent prominent fight in the next maybe 4 fights.
All of the Eastern European fighters, when they come over, you know, Triple G's, all the guys at Joe Diaz's gym, all the people that train with Lomachenko, just they fight so much as amateurs that when they turn pro, they just look completely different to the English fighters and the American fighters.
Yeah,
because they've all had 200-300 amateur fights.
That's insane.
So, you know, it's quite normal now for them to be, you know, challenging for quite, you know, prominent belts with 10, 11, 13, 14 fights.
Yeah, like Lomachenko.
Exactly.
Yeah. And speaking of these like Ukrainian Russian fighters, there's been a debate lately about how they spell all their names. You know, we talked about, we'll start with Lomachenko. Is it Vasily or Vasil? Do you spell it? I've seen it spelled Vasyl and then Vasily.
And then Gennady Golovkin,
or I or something like that, not Y. And then now Gennady adds the I at the, like right before the Y. He's like, oh, that's how you really spell it. And then I saw another one earlier today that said Alexander Usyk doesn't spell it with an O. He spells it with an A. And then there was other people saying, no, he spells it with an O. So I'm just like, what the hell? Like, what's with this spelling? I mean, I get it. Like, for Gennady Golovkin, it was marketing purposes because Tom Loeffler, you know, I mean, that makes sense. They did it more for marketing purposes when he came to the States. But, you know, we gotta know how to spell these people's names here, you know, especially when we're reporting on stuff and especially when we write stuff. So, but moving on. Also on that same night, actually, on ESPN, Oscar Valdez returned to defend he has a WBO featherweight title. He improves to 26-0 with a 12-round unanimous decision win over Jason Sanchez, who was also undefeated, suffered his first loss. Did you catch this fight? I was actually watching the DAZN card, but did you catch this? How do you think Valdez looked?
I was watching DAZN and then just had this on in the background. Had the usual TV and laptop combo that we seem to have to do every weekend now. I was paying more attention to the DAZN card. I thought Valdez looked good. I thought you could see the change of camp to Reynoso. He had a little bit more head movement, you know, which is hopefully going to prolong his career since before he just had that, you know, as they claim, the typical Mexican style where he was just more of a warrior.
Yeah.
It was a good performance. You know, I think that's his second fight back since he broke his jaw against Scott Quigg. So, you know, in a recent episode of Carl Frampton's podcast, he said that when he signed with Top Rank, he'd been promised the fight with Valdez. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that's, you know, a fight we'll see.
Yeah.
That should be a real war.
I hope so, man, because like this, I feel like Valdez, like, you know, I mean, I get it, Top Rank and everything and all that stuff, but it's like, come on, man, like these guys got to fight each other. They got to fight each other. All the champions, like, you know, what did Gervonta Davis tweeted out today, I think, or today, saying, if I can't get, after this next fight where he's fighting in Baltimore in his hometown, he's like, if I can't get another world champion at 130, he's like, I'm moving up to 135.
I think he's going to need to. That's those pictures
but
honestly,
of him lately. I'm kind of glad that he said that though, because it kind of puts pressure on his promoter, PBC, Mayweather Promotions, and stuff like that. In terms of saying like, yeah, give me these other world champions, man. And honestly, like, At 130 pounds, I think Davis beats all of them.
I think one of his biggest problems is going to be on the scales.
Yeah.
He balloons up in between fights all the time. You know, that picture that his girlfriend put on the other day, he looked huge.
Yeah.
So it's just, how much is it going to take out of him, you know, having to boil back down to make 130? Because he's always been big for that weight. You know, he lost his championship once on the Mayweather-Conor McGregor undercard because he was overweight.
Yeah.
So
but he still got a ton of exposure for that, though. But who's at 130?
Mikey's moved up, I think, now. Lomachenko.
But Lomachenko
floats between 130, 135.
Lomachenko has said that he's willing to move down to 130 if there's a significant fight. So, I mean, I don't know. These guys really need to figure out. Berchelt. Okay, Berchelt has a belt at 130, right?
Yeah, that'd be a good fight.
Cancio?
Navarrete?
Oh, yeah. Emmanuel Navarrete has a belt.
Tevin Farmer, that's the one that everyone's been talking about.
Tevin Farmer. Oh, yeah, they've been talking about Davis and Farmer for a long time.
The new champion, Jamal Herring.
Jamal Herring, that's right, recent champion. I mean, like, yeah, they all need to fight each other. But honestly, I think Davis, as long as he can make the weight, I think Davis is probably the best one in that division.
The one I would like to see would be the clash of styles, Tevin Farmer. Tevin Farmer and Davis, I think the smack talk before the fight would be good. And then also,
be good publicity.
I think, you know, Tevin Farmer's your skillful switch hitting southpaw, and then you've got Davis, just a battering ram, really, you know, just heavy-handed.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a good fight if they'd make it.
But put Valdez against, you know, going back to Oscar Valdez, who fights at 126, put him against Leo Santa Cruz. Put him against Leo Santa Cruz like at the StubHub. You know how good they're both Mexican-American fighters.
Bob Arum said afterwards, we're going to look for a fight later on in the year between Valdez and Carl Frampton. If Frampton is successful in his next fight.
But Frampton, I mean, they signed Frampton to a couple fights, right? Or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like, honestly, like, I like Frampton, but, like, you know, I don't want to see Valdez against Frampton.
I think that, you know, losing to Josh Warrington in the way that he did.
He's not, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he could still recover and come back, but the Warrington loss, I mean, why doesn't Valdez fight Warrington?
Well, you know, he fights next weekend, so maybe down the line he could do.
Well, I don't know why they just don't unify. You know, they're fighting a week apart. You could make that fight. Why are you going to fight Carl Frampton?
Who probably just because Frampton's got more of a name in the US.
But that'd be unification.
Do you think
fight.
If we stop someone in the street now, they'd know who Josh Warrington is? Probably not.
If you stop somebody in the street and ask them who Carl Frampton is, they probably wouldn't know who Carl Frampton is.
No, they would.
No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. And that's not an insult. We're not saying that like as an insult to these fighters. It's just, you know, it's the truth. Like, in comparison to, like, oh, you know who Mayweather is? But yeah. You know, the casual fans is where the money's at in combat sports, essentially, especially boxing. But I hope so, man. Like, Valdez and Santa Cruz, and even fighting like a guy like Joseph Diaz or something. I know he moved up to 130. He's at 130 technically, but he was just at 126. But I don't know. I just, these guys are all dancing around each other. But, you know, it is what it is. And then also on that card, really quickly, Gabriel Flores stays undefeated, gets his 14th win, 8-round unanimous decision over Salvador Briceno.
If that name rings a bell, it's because he was the youngest ever signee by a Top Ranker.
What?
At 16 years old.
You serious?
From Northern California.
Are you serious right now? So Gabriel Flores, 79, 73, 78, 74 twice. 14-0. So he's already kind of high up there too with these wins.
He's one of those that's selling out big crowds up north in Northern California. So I'm sure they'll keep bringing him through. He's still really young. Don't give him too much too quickly, too young.
Yeah.
Especially signing to Top Rank at 16 years old. That's pretty good. There's not many people who get into a big promotion at that age.
Yeah. And then backtracking a little bit. Last Friday, the 7th of June, at the Turning Stone Resort and Casino in Verona, New York. How is it? Cletus Seldin gets the 11th round TKO over Zab Judah for the vacant NABA super lightweight title. I think the biggest story to come out of this was that Zab Judah was hospitalized following this. What did he have? He had
a bleed on the brain. They've just released something today saying that I think this afternoon he was released from hospital.
Yeah, he was released earlier today. After suffering a small bleed when he got knocked out. And for quite a bit, for like about a day and a half or something, or a couple days, we didn't get any update. People were saying, "Oh, what's going on here? Hopefully, it doesn't turn out bad."
It was scary because you were getting conflicting reports on what had actually happened to him.
Right. So there was conflicting reports, and it sucks, man. Regardless, you don't want to see any fighter go through something like that. But that's the nature of the game when you step between those ropes. I really hope he doesn't fight again, especially after something like this. I think this is kind of like the wake up call to him, saying, "Hey, you know what? I think this is it."
Let's hope so. At 41 years old, they put him in in the ring with a live dog in Cletus Seldin. Is 24-1, has actually had like a lot of knockouts on his record. So, disappointing way to end his career. But let's hope that he's safe. Let's hope that he's doing well. His family's doing well.
No, right. I mean, yeah, whatever you thought about him in the past or something like that, if you liked him or not, he is a professional fighter. He was in some pretty memorable fights, especially against Mayweather. That whole memorable brawl that happened when he fought Mayweather. What was it, 2005, maybe 2006, around there, mid-2000s? And he was tagging Mayweather for first couple rounds. But then Mayweather figured him out. But he was tagging him. He was.
That was probably when, Judah was in his prime. And back then he was...
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
One of the top dogs in the division.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, Judah's been in some memorable fights, having, almost 55 fights, essentially 60 fights or whatever. He's been around the game for a long, long time. So, the team here at the last round sends our prayers and our condolences and our well wishes to Team Zab Judah and Zab Judah himself. Hopefully everything turns out fine. But from recent reports, I think he's like you said, he's been released, and that's a really good sign. So hopefully, it's all stable and it all works out for him. And like I said, something like this, you might not want to go back into the ring anymore. So hopefully he's okay. This Saturday, you got another countryman fighting. You got, two prominent guys in like a month for you, man.
The last round will be there. We'll be ringside.
We will. Actually, you will. But Tyson Fury makes his debut on ESPN, right? This is his first fight on ESPN from the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. Goes up against your favorite of mine, Tom Schwarz. We've been saying Schwarz for the longest time. I thought there was a T in there, but there's no T. It's Schwarz?
Schwarz? The German destroyer?
Sword? I don't know. So Tyson Fury is his first fight since the draw against Deontay Wilder last December, who they're supposedly supposed to fight in early 2020. Fury says he wants to fight at least, one more time after this, or maybe two more times. I don't know, at least one more time before the Wilder fight. So, I mean, we'll see. You never know. If Randy Ruiz can upset Joshua, what if Schwarz upsets Fury? What kind of world are we living in?
Oh, man,
What kind of world are we living in where Andy Ruiz and Tom Schwarz are the lineal and unified heavyweight champions of the world?
That would kind of show us the reason that we love boxing.
Oh yeah, what did Larry Merchant used to say? The theater of the unexpected.
It's just stuff like that that's kind of why you love the sport. Just such unusual things, Andy Ruiz being the poster boy now of the heavyweight division with the dad body.
Yeah, he's going to meet the president of Mexico this week sometime. So, he's living in the moment right now. But I think Fury gets a decision. He's not really a knockout artist. He's more of just like a bob and weave box kind of guy. So he's going to get the decision. He might try to knock him out. But
I'm thinking that he might try to knock him out. He looks in good shape. the rumor is he's been doing really well in sparring and that he's been dropping a few of his sparring partners, but I don't know whether that's just stuff that people are trying to release.
Yeah, maybe it's just to build hype.
Yeah, to build the hype up. But I'm thinking he might go for the knockout just, like you said, it's his first fight with the Top Rank affiliation with ESPN. He's hoping to put something towards, how, Wilder's going in there with that fight after that big knockout. You're thinking that Fury's probably want to go in there with at least a stoppage against, a lesser opponent like someone like Tom Schwarz.
Yeah.
You don't want to go in there with a boring 12-round decision, but the only problem is that's unfortunately the way that Fury fights.
Yeah.
I've grown up in the UK watching him for all those years, and, when he fought the Klitschko the first time round, he wasn't really liked in England because of his boring style.
Yeah.
It's just that, going to the top, having the almighty fall down to where, he contemplates committing suicide, to then rising all the way to the top again. That's
comeback story.
It's a comeback story. Everyone loves that kind of the comeback, the underdog. And that's why he seems to now, the fans have turned on him and taken him under the wing. He's one of us.
Yeah.
So,
it is what it is. It's boxing. It comes and goes. But, wrapping up that card, Sullivan, Barrera, and Jesse Hart are also facing off. That should be a pretty solid matchup.
That should be a good fight, yeah.
Mikaela Mayer and Lizbeth Crespo are also on that card. This is on ESPN Plus, too.
I think it's on both, yeah. The undercard is going to be on ESPN, and then I think the main card is going to be on ESPN Plus.
So regular channel and then the app. And then also on ESPN Plus, is it the same day? Josh Warrington actually defends his title, his IBF World Featherweight title. I think you really like this fight. This is actually a good fight.
This should be a good fight. They don't really like each other. They fought each other as amateurs.
Kid Galahad from the Dominic Ingle gym. 26-0 against 28-0. That's somebody's O. Is it gonna go?
Now,
who do you got here?
See, this is I thought Lee Selby was going to beat Josh Warrington, and then when he beat him,
the theater of the unexpected.
Exactly. Then he goes in against Cal Frampton, and I was like, "Oh, Cal Frampton's going to school Warrington." So every time he steps up, I always, I'd back his opponent, and Warrington always proves me wrong. But I'm thinking Kid Galahad. I'm just thinking that this...
I'm going with you then. I'm going with you.
You think so? I think Kid Galahad, I don't know whether this is just going to be a step too far. I think Warrington actually beat Galahad in the amateurs. But I'm just thinking that Ingle's style, being able to negate, being able to switch, orthodox to southpaw, I think he might just frustrate Warrington on the night.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that Galahad might just take it on points.
We'll see. That's on ESPN Plus. So at the First Direct Arena in Leeds. So that's going to be an earlier probably fight, at least in the States over here in California.
Yeah, mid-afternoon.
But, once again, thank you for listening to episode 37 of The Last Round, whether you're listening on the way to work, on a long car ride, at home, cooking, maybe you're on the toilet. Who knows? As long as you're listening, we appreciate it. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, social media, all that stuff at The Last Round 12, at The Last Round 12. Interact with us. Ask us some questions. Who you want to be on the show. See what's up. And then, like I said at the beginning of the show, we apologize that Ronald Winky Wright could not be on this episode. We did advertise him. So some logistics, some scheduling issues didn't work out. And he didn't call. He didn't call during the show. So I was kind of hoping,
blacklisted.
I was kind of hoping that he would call during the show. And maybe we could just throw
I blocked him,
Danny.
He had his one chance.
Mike got so mad at this that he blocked him. No, he didn't block him.
And don't forget to follow us at The Last Round 12 on Twitter and Instagram. We're going to be at the fights next week. So any updates, any interviews we can get, any little snippets of news, we'll post on there. Photographs,
movies, anything. So once again, I'm Danny Z. For Mike Shepard, this is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This